The Senate wants to prevent a presidential withdrawal from NATO, and the Army National Guard hits pause on some student loan repayments. All of that and more today, July 21st, 2023. Good morning, Early Birds. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, an amendment in the Senate Defense Authorization Bill looks beyond the 2024 presidential election. The Senate passed an amendment that would make it harder for a president to withdraw from NATO. It's seen as a precautionary measure in the event that Donald Trump returns to the White House in 2025. The bipartisan amendment would not allow the president to withdraw from NATO without congressional approval. It would require 2/3 of senators to vote for withdrawal. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine introduced the amendment alongside Republican Marco Rubio. Senators voted 65 to 28 in favor of the amendment.
There had been an issue raised in the last few years about whether any president could unilaterally withdraw from NATO, which was approved by the Senate in a treaty. The Constitution of the United States indicates that the Senate must ratify treaties, but is silent about how to exit treaties. The United States Supreme Court in 1979 said that is a political question for the legislature and the executive to resolve. What this amendment would do would make plain that no one could withdraw from NATO, the United States from NATO, without either a 2/3 vote in the Senate or an act of Congress.
Here's why it matters. Trump said at a rally in 2018 that he told U.S. allies he would withdraw from NATO if all countries do not spend 2% of their GDP on defense. The alliance has agreed on the 2% goal. But many member states have yet to meet it. Polls show Trump is the frontrunner in the 2024 Republican primary. This week on Fox News, Trump said he told NATO leaders when he was president that he will not protect them from Russia if they were delinquent on NATO contributions. If the president tries to withdraw without Senate approval, the amendment would limit funding for withdrawal until a 2/3 majority of both chambers approve the decision. The legislation also authorizes Congress to establish its own legal counsel to represent the legislator before federal courts in any dispute with the White House over NATO withdrawal. A number of high-profile Republicans joined the Democrats voting for the amendment, including Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham. The NATO amendment will need to survive negotiations over a final defense bill with the Republican-held House. Another amendment introduced by Republican Senators Josh Hawley and J.D. Vance was voted down. It would have made the Pentagon change how costs are calculated when the president uses his drawdown authorities to send weapons to allies abroad. Another important story, a key senator is refusing to lift his long-standing hold on the sale of 40 Block 70 F-16 fighter jets to Turkey. That comes despite the Biden administration's announcement last week that it wants to move forward with the deal. The $20 billion potential sale also includes 80 modernization kits. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the sale would proceed last week. That was after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced at the NATO summit in Lithuania that Turkey would ratify Sweden's NATO bid. But New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez said he'll continue to use his position as the Foreign Relations Committee chairman in Congress to block the sale. Menendez said that he's always said the ratification of Sweden is not the reason why he would lift the hold on F-16s. The senator told Reuters last week the Biden administration should find a way to ensure that Turkey's aggression against its neighbors ceases. For example, Greece in recent years has frequently complained of Turkish incursions into its airspace. Also, Turkey has used F-16s in attacks on U.S.-backed Kurdish groups in northern Syria. Menendez's home state of New Jersey boasts the 6th largest Greek-American population in the U.S. and the 4th largest Armenian-American population. Despite his opposition to the F-16 sale, Menendez in April permitted a $259 million sale of avionics software upgrades for Turkey's current F-16 fleet. Even if the F-16 sale eventually clears Congress, it's unclear when Turkey would receive its new aircraft due to a manufacturing backlog for the in-demand jet. In other news, we're highlighting the Selected Service Members of the Year awarded by the Military Times Foundation. Here's the 2023 Guardian of the Year.
I chose to enlist because it was the American dream. I know that sounds cliche, but it was. I emigrated here from Mexico with my mom and my two sisters. For me, it was an opportunity to go see the world. My name is Victoria Garcia. I'm a captain in the United States Space Force. Space Force is the newest military branch charged with organizing and training and equipping our Guardians to head all over the world and support space global operations. Space Force defends against the threat to the space domain. It is very contested, and we protect and defend against the ability to maneuver that domain. We work with all the other branches very closely, specifically in a combat zone. If the Army or the Marines are headed out the door for a specific mission and they need to make sure that they have secure comms to speak to each other, or they need some type of GPS navigation to make sure they're headed to the right direction, those are space assets that they're relying on, and they need us. They need the Guardians to make sure those assets are there for them. All the planning to get those teams out the door is something I oversee. We talk to those crews on a consistent basis to make sure they have everything they need to execute the mission and support all those joint partners that they work with. My job is specifically focused on overseeing Space Delta III. Our mission area is the space electromagnetic warfare arena.
With tensions high on the ground between Russia and the U.S. and NATO, there's some concern that the conflict could one day spill over into space.
In about February of 2022. The orders we received were from the President of the United States. They were filtered down through the Secretary of Defense and given to us by the United States Space Command to establish the Space Electromagnetic Warfare Flight. It was the first in history that U.S. Spacecom was establishing and bedding down in a location we had never been before. We used that time to build all of our logistics plans. We were able to offload all of the equipment, transport that over to a hardened aircraft shelter, and then turn it into the Space Force's Operations Center. At that point, we started our Overwatch missions. We were able to posture our Guardians and airmen to watch over the electromagnetic spectrum and be called upon when needed to support a crisis in any part of that country. My team, they're the ones who exuded courage. They're the ones that persevered and worked so tirelessly just to create that flight there in Europe. That mission was successful because of my team's efforts. They showed that they can operate quickly. They showed that they could work tirelessly. I hope when people look at me, they see a picture of perseverance. They see a picture of someone who's overcome. I'm so happy. I'm living the American dream. There's no end in sight for me. I enjoy what I do. I'm motivated by the things that we support and the domain that we protect.
Congrats to Captain Garcia. Also on the radar for today, the Army National Guard has temporarily suspended payments to soldiers eligible for student loan repayment incentives. A National Guard spokesperson said there was insufficient funding specific to the student loan repayment program incentive, which led to the suspension. The spokesperson clarified that the agency has funds to resume the payments, but doing so will require technical accounting steps to realign funding. The component's typical loan repayment program offers up to $50,000 towards a soldier's qualifying federal student loans in return for a 6-year commitment. The Army then pays the soldier's loan servicer a portion of the benefit on the contract's anniversary each year. Payments that were due between fiscal 2020 and fiscal 2022 are impacted by the pause. It's not clear how many soldiers are affected. According to Defense Department marketing studies, prospective troops consider education benefits a strong draw to the military, second only to its regular paychecks. After the Supreme Court blocked President Joe Biden's attempt to cancel up to $20,000 in federal student loans for 43 million Americans, some may be searching for new ways to pay their debts. And now, here's some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. The Pentagon announced a new $1.3 billion package of long-term military aid to Ukraine this week. It includes 4 air defense systems and an undisclosed number of drones. The Czech parliament gave its expected approval this week to a defense treaty signed with the United States in May. The agreement would deepen military cooperation and make it easier to deploy U.S. troops on Czech territory. And the White House warned that the Russian military is preparing for possible attacks on civilian shipping vessels in the Black Sea. The warning came days after Russia suspended participation in a wartime deal that allowed grain to flow from Ukraine to countries around the world. And on this day in history, in 1861, the first major land battle of the Civil War, known as the First Battle of Bull Run, took place in Virginia. That's it for us this morning. To get more of the top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and a comment wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media @Defense_News and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted by me, Jonathan Lehrfeld, and produced by Zimone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by Brian Harris and Davis Winke. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Roos. Have a great day.